Hey everybody, welcome to Fanboy Planet. Today I'm talking with Stephen Prince, who is the creator, writer, sometimes artist of Monster Matador. We met at LA Comic Con, and it's just going to be a fun conversation, I hope, about the evolution of his character, of his ideas, and the world that he's built. So, Stephen, hey, good to see you.
Hey,
Wonderful
how's it going?
to be talking with you. It's going all right. So
Yeah.
let's get into it. Of
Yep.
course, did just mention that you finished up a campaign a few months ago for the
Yeah.
next chapter, if you will, in the Monster Matador saga. Do you call it the Matador verse, anything like that?
Yeah, that's what we're going for. That's what, once we could get that into the vernacular,
That'd be good. All right, so it
that'll be
started
good.
here.
Yeah.
We'll
So
start it as a
keep it with
hashtag
that.
after this. Yeah.
Yeah, we should do I'll do that. It's a good idea.
So this got triggered by I was seeing you on Instagram posting like things from way
Yeah.
back when, different versions of this. I think the earliest I've seen is a 2007, maybe that was it. You
Yeah.
shared with me some artwork offline
Yeah.
version of this. So when and how did Monster Matador start forming in your head?
Yeah. So as a kid, even as a kid, I've always kind of had an affinity for matadors. I think we have like Spanish back in the way past in my family, and they had gotten me a matador, the hat. So it's always been kind of like something that's on my mind. But as an adult, I've always been kind of drawn to the movement of it, sort of, and that's like the poses and the sort of the attitude and whatnot. And there's actually a Peter Sellers movie called The Bobo, in which he plays a matador. And for a while, I was obsessed with it. I just watch it over and over again. And I had written a story. I think it was as a script, a spec script about a matador, just a regular matador. And going back to like 2007, which we were talking about, and on that sketch, it's actually 8/30. So August 30th, 2007 is when the Monster Matador was born. But I was my roommate at the time was an artist, and she was always kind of encouraging me to start drawing again because I hadn't drawn in years. It's mostly focused on writing, and she got me a sketchbook, and I would sketch in it. And one day I was just hanging around, sitting down, and just trying to, like, as an exercise, telling myself, okay, I want to come up with a character like a Batman sort of thing, something that is kind of like singular and iconic and whatnot. And the name Monster Matador just kind of popped into my head. And like I said, Matadors are always on my mind because I think around in that time I was definitely watching that movie. I was definitely watching that movie a lot. So that movie was probably on my mind. And then I did a sketch, a little drawing, which I showed you. And at the time, I think things like Samurai Jack and I think Afro Samurai were really kind of popular. Like the whole Cartoon Network was
Yeah.
kind of having a renaissance. So if you look at that drawing, it's kind of this very kind of like in that kind of mode. So my original thinking, as I was thinking about it and seeing that sketch brought all this back, was like, oh, if I were, it's kind of like as kind of a Cartoon Network pitch, like, oh, if I were going to do this Monster Matador in that style. So the original version of it had a much more comedic bent to it. I love the Three Stooges too, so it kind of had that sort of like slapstick humor to it. And I wound up doing this very, very crude 8-page story. And I think it begins with this sort of lizard. It's like, before it was a lizard, and then it shows the matador. It's like before he fought the bulls, and then it goes like, now he fights monsters, and this tiny lizard is this giant, monster creature. and it cuts to the city with people running out of the city, and the Matador is just standing there with his sword and his cape and his daughter, and he stands up to like this giant 8-story monster or whatever, and they do the little dance. He waves his cape, the monster slashes at him, and he gets out of the way, and then I think the monster lifts his leg up to step on the Matador, and the Matador just kind of raises his sword, and the monster steps on the sword, and in a very kind of slapstick Three Stooges way, the monster loses his balance, falls back, and is defeated. And that was kind of like the initial concept, to do kind of like these little sketches, these little shorts, and kind of like that vein, kind of playing off the the kind of slapstick nature of it. Like, yeah, go ahead. Oh no, and she had done like a ink wash over it, which made it look a little better. And then I think I printed up like 50 of them or something.
Okay, so mini comic, and I did see on your site, which again I'll put this across, right? That there's a YouTube trailer, so there's a little bit of animation involved. That you got that?
Yeah, so that we did later. But that was kind of in that style too, in that vein. But at the time, this was 2007, and thinking back, it's not that long ago, but it is. There was no. I don't even think Kickstarter was around. Comixology, I don't think, was around. It wasn't as easy to just go on the computer and find an artist. Like, I mean, you could, but you're kind of like crossing your fingers and whatever. It wasn't. Yeah, DeviantArt. I for the life of me, I cannot figure out how to like. It's so overwhelming. It's so overwhelming to me. But it wasn't as like now. It's like, okay, you get an artist, you go on Kickstarter. You know what I mean? It's so easy back then. And this was a concept that, and at the time too, it was, he was a Mexican lead, he was a Latino lead, and you really didn't see that. And I didn't really know how to kind of like do it into a comic or pitch it. So I kind of just kept it in my back pocket. Just kind of let it. There was something special about it to me, and I knew that I wanted to do it right. I didn't want to just like rush it or whatever.
You've worked in animation, obviously. You've done some screenwriting. You're here in LA. I'm so excited I get to say that. I'm here in LA.
You're in LA, yeah.
But it hadn't been for a long time. So with some creators, it's kind of weird to say this. It's an IP, and yet the reality. You talk about 2007, and I can think back to DeviantArt. Yeah, I remember working on a couple of books that was how we were trying to find the artists, and it was very difficult. And I'm thinking too, when you talk about a Latino lead too, you're right. 14 years ago, and you are in this cusp of how much has changed, and in
so much.
For the better too.
Absolutely.
I always have to say that, yes, for the better things have gotten, but it's interesting because I think the earliest actual story that you shared with me was labeled a webcomic. So that's another thing that has changed. You talk about this lizard, this monster, first 8-page story. But when I came into this, I discovered your book through Tango of the Matadors. I'd seen a Kickstarter, thought, cool concept, and I don't know. I just went, all right. I've unfortunately Kickstarted enough for the month. I've got a certain budget where I would spend.
No, I trust me, I get it. Yeah.
So when I picked that up at LA Comic Con, I went, this is a really fully formed world. So what went into your world building process?
It's so I'm going to jump. I'm just going to touch on sort of the next stuff that went in. But my roommate, my ex, she was Mexican. So and that's kind of why he's from Mexico and not from Spain, because it was more familiar, more immediate to me. she kept encouraging me to like keep drawing. I was like, no, I got to find an artist or whatever. She's like, no, just draw. Just do it. Like, so I did this other kind of like one shot. And again, crude, but like better. You know what I mean? But I think it took me like 2 years to do. And in that one, the sort of mythology, a lot of the like pieces of the mythology started forming. I wasn't really thinking about it yet as like a world or a pitch or anything like that. I was just kind of sometimes like I've written novels too. And usually what I like to do is have like an outline. And I like to just kind of like feel the story out just as an exercise. And because with Matador, because I knew I was mostly doing it for myself at that point, I wasn't as concerned about locking everything down. So I thought it would be fun to just kind of like feel it out and see what happens. You know what I mean? And in the next one, I added his brother-in-law, who is his daughter's uncle. And
Arturo, right?
Arturo. And there was this other kind of, I'm a big Alejandro Jodorowsky fan. So instead of El Topo, I did El Esteban because I don't know why, but he was kind of modeled after me. And he was kind of this man in black. And he shows up where the Matador is. The Matador goes to visit Arturo in where he's living in this town that they've rebuilt, and this three-headed bull has sort of charged through there. And this one is a lot less slapsticky, but the humor is still there, and the gist of it is basically this bull is on a path toward Mexico. And so the Matador hears that, and he's like, Mexico, I can't let him get into, Mexico and destroy my country. So he goes after the bull with the man in black, and this El Esteban, and it turns out El Esteban has been looking for the Matador because he wants to be the #1 monster killer in the world. So he kind of challenges him and whatnot. And El Esteban has his guns and the Matador has his sword, and El Esteban, shoots at the bull and it does nothing, and the bull gores him and whatnot. And the Matador, of course, does his little dance and kills the bull. And El Esteban, just his mind is blown that his guns didn't work, and it was just the Matador with his sword and cape that killed the monster. And along that journey, there's this kind of like group of cannibals that sort of come in and attack them. And those so a lot of these elements then carried over when I started doing the book for real. But that was kind of like, you can look at that was kind of like the proto whatever Monster Matador. That's closer to what it is now. That was kind of like all the elements are there, but they're not quite like fit in the right puzzle,
Yeah. So
but
let me ask that is, I think I just read that actually, that story. And so do you think of this as it's all one long narrative, or are you doing soft reboots and every time it appears again? Because I do want to say, picking up Tango with the Matadors, I was instantly in the world. I mean, I'm interested in what happened before, but I need it.
Yeah, there's stories behind that too as to why, but so these I don't consider part of the world. So then from that I did the webcomic, and I cut that into a webcomic, and then I did a sequel which takes place in the same town, and they fight the Chupacabra. And that involves a town folk help him out. So there's an ex-football player, his wife, a rabbi, and a French chef, this kind of cast of characters.
Who, by the way, is disturbingly hairy.
So those are, I mean, like the comedies there. It's a bit more. It's not slapstick, but it's definitely got like it's definitely got more humor to it.
Thanks for watching. Please hit the subscribe button to make sure you don't miss out on any Fanboy Planet video content. And visit fanboyplanet.com for other features, reviews, interviews, previews, and of course, listening to the Fanboy Planet podcast. And remember, use your powers for good.